Hey guys, welcome back to the Facebook Live show here at the Diocese of St. Augustine. And we have a regular where we first started with Mike Day. Mike Day is back, and it's so perfect because it's perfect timing. It's February and love is in the air. As we know, this is the month of St. Valentine, and we have a big week coming up. It is the National Marriage Week, and that goes from February 7th to the 14th. And in the comment section, there'll be a website so that you can access nationalmarriageweekusa.org to find out more, get some resources, get some benefits for your marriage. This is the time to reinvest in your marriage. And this is the month of love. And it's this awesome time to regenerate and refocus on the greatest gift, married love. That is so generative, that reflects such the beauty and glory of God and his generativity. So as we gather, Mike, thank you so much for coming back to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back. I'm glad I did well enough the first time to be able to be invited back. Yeah, thank you.
You're like an anchor on one of the the news channels or something. You're so good. So I'm really happy though, and beyond that, just super thrilled that your work is just so fruitful, and your office is always so active, and your website's always updated. And as a priest who is constantly serving the needs of couples that are being prepared for marriage, but also couples that are struggling and maybe meeting some challenges in their life, there's always resources with your office, and you're always such a big help. So make sure that you know this domain, make sure that you know this website, and in the comment section below, Brandon's going to put the diocesan site so that you can access exactly what Mike Day and his staff is doing right here in the diocese. So thank you so much, Mike, for everything you do.
You're most welcome. It's not only just a passion of mine, but I've got an outstanding team of support in our office who all care very deeply about relationships, not just within marriage, but even beyond that. Couples trying to find their way, couples who are dating, engaged couples, married couples, hurting couples. You know, that relationship, that love is where we encounter Christ, and it's where we need the most help sometimes too. So.
And I think some of the help as well is always found in examination of conscience. I think of the pastoral services or even what we're recommended to do by the fathers, like St. Augustine, for example. Christian, know thyself. It's in knowledge of self that we recognize, hey, this is what's going wrong. These are some of the dynamics that are happening. And in that self-recognition, to be able to turn in conversion to Christ, who is there always as advocate, always there as guide and good shepherd. But we need help sometimes articulating what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's what I love as being a priest, is just to be able to join my heart to someone else's heart and really listen to the rhythm of their life, and to potentially lead them to say, well, maybe this is what's contributing to your unhappiness. Maybe this is what's contributing to the failure in communication in relationships or in the family. And most certainly, even in my life, even though I'm a priest and I do this day in and day out, I need to turn to other people, my spiritual directors, my mentors, because when we're in the midst of our own emotional state, sometimes we can kind of get lost.
Yeah.
And really not know, what's happening in my life. And the church is that model of what God did for us. He sent us his own son, Jesus Christ, to join us in our personal suffering, in our emotional turmoil and our ups and downs, so that he could speak a word that will rouse us to greater freedom, greater dependency on his love, and a greater communion and fellowship with one another. And this fellowship of married love is super special.
Oh, it's outstanding. And I was very blessed this weekend to just come off of a healing retreat that we hosted. It's one of the new things that we're trying here in the office for individuals. And at this retreat, one point that was emphasized more than any was how wounds are points of intimacy with Christ. And to not be afraid of the wounds. In fact, it can be our wounds that become our sources of strength. And,
so true.
And we forget that sometimes in married life. We mistake the wounds for failures. But marriage is a vocation. It's a process. It's a gift given to us by God precisely because we're wounded people. And it's in working through and navigating through those wounds that you become stronger, not only as a couple, but as an individual and closer to Christ. So we can't be afraid of those wounds.
I think of The Wounded Healer, that awesome book. But, just what Mike Day just mentioned to us, that Christ draws close to the wound. And if we are to be alter Christus, if we are to be another Christ, if we apply that in marriage, wouldn't it make sense that instead of the wound that was incurred or encountering the wound in the other, wouldn't that draw us closer together? And sometimes that needs coaching.
It does. It does. It's not something we know from the start. In fact, that's why we're given the gift of marriage. It's not just for ourselves, but for our children. It's through the family that we as children learn that process. So we learn how to navigate through some of those challenges through healthy communication skills and so forth, so that we're better prepared to do it in relationship in the future. So it's God knew what he was doing. There is a plan
and how much it sanctifies the couple, and the fathers all talk about it, in the initial centuries of the church, is that marriage really renders a greater sanctification of the soul. I think in my life, I go back to my rectory. If I get along with the priest, that's great. If I don't get along with the priest that I live with, I just go to my own personal quarters. Where for marriage, like, that's not going to happen. It's
always there. If there's something wrong, you're always going to see it.
Right in your Now, what's great about Mike Day and I and Brandon behind the frame is, we were in the office just a minute ago, and we just get going on conversation. And it's really dense, it's really deep, it's marital theology, it's, society, it's law, it's all of these different things. And we can most certainly get off topic, but we want to make sure that we're covering Marriage Week and the month of February and what you could potentially participate in to enrich your marriages. In the comment section below, we're going to offer to you the USCCB website, which gives you a bunch of resources so that you could recognize that the USCCB on a national level is also trying to enter into this week, to provide resources, and they're very good resources. So why don't you check that link out? And Mike, for this kind of the month, this week, the day of February 14th, could you give us like a little overview of your perception of what's happening in and around our country and the world as it relates to this National Marriage Week?
Well, that's a huge question.
I know. We're going to be here for like 45 minutes.
Okay, so this will be part one of our ongoing seminar on marriage and family in the modern era. But as we look at this month, and this month is a good month to be talking about it because it's on everyone's radar anyway, for better or for worse, with it being Valentine's Day. And I say that just because from my own personal experience, just to put it on the table, I know we've got red here. I'm wearing red. It's all themed for Valentine's Day. I used to hate it, Father Pagano. I mean, with a passion. Growing up, I didn't have the most positive experience and encounter with love. I spent
now, Mike, you've got to be careful here because St. Valentine's my guy. I mean, he's my patron saint. I chose him as my confirmation name. How could you not love that guy?
Oh, let me count the ways.
That's very good. That was not rehearsed, by the way.
But in fairness, I came around. I hope Valentinus has forgiven me for my past transgressions against him. But no, I used to hate it, and really it was because of my own woundedness. I spent so much of my life alone. In fact, Evie, my bride, she's the first girlfriend I've ever had. I met her when I was between sophomore and junior year of college. So I spent my whole life alone, never going to homecoming, never going to prom, not being in a relationship. My parents got divorced between my sophomore and junior year of high school. So a real bitterness had crept in, a cynicism towards love. In fact, it's funny, when Evie, my bride, when we were just friends before we were dating, I was studying philosophy at the time, and we would have these long conversations in the evening, going into the night. And one of them was about how love did not exist. I spent the entire evening trying to convince her as a philosopher that love was a man-made convention and that it didn't exist. Needless to say, 15 years later, she's gotten the better end of that argument. Obviously. I came around to see the light. We ended up dating, getting engaged, and married. But I bring that up because I can certainly empathize with some of the cynicism towards love. Which is not helped by the fact that there are many romantic portrayals of love that are just absurd. Romantic comedies are not the best source of catechesis on what authentic love is. It really
isn't it interesting though? Like rom-coms are that genre of movie that men and women come together on. And it's like, I'm not going to watch a super sappy Hallmark romantic movie. It's like, where do we meet in the middle? Let's do a rom-com, but it's so off base.
It really is. And it's well-intentioned, but it's still rooted in this mentality that love conquers all. Love is all you need.
All
and
you
so
need is love, love.
I was about to sing, but then I realized
Come on.
we would lose all our viewership.
Everybody is
I
singing.
immediately
X out,
cut it out,
X out.
cut it out, backing out. So, but it really does a disservice because it's, as we always say, love is not a feeling. Love is not a feeling. It's not an emotion. It's a choice. In fact, I learned some great wisdom from the founders of Diocese and Marriage Renewal, and in fact, the priest, Father Bernie Ahern, who created that ministry with them. And when he was going through what love is, he had them diagram the sentence. You know, when you say "I love you," let's break that down. He wrote "I love you" on the board. So let's diagram that. What's the subject? I. What's the object? You. Well, what's in the middle? Love. And what is it? It's a verb. It's not something that happens to the object. It's something that you do. It's a conscious choice. It's a decision to love. And so in that sense, love doesn't make the marriage, but marriage makes love work. You know, it's that choice again and again, that perpetual choice to choose the other over yourself. In fact, if there's one thing that anyone needs to know about marriage, whether they're discerning marriage, whether they ever want to be married, whether they're currently married, so in marriage, the relationship is not about you. Certainly, it's your vocation and you benefit from it, but it's that one relationship in which you're supposed to be this gift to the other. The other becomes almost more important than the self. There's a dying to self that happens in that relationship, and your whole perspective changes. You know, it's not like when you get married, you're just closer roommates now. It's not, you know, me and you living in this household together, kind of helping each other out. No, you've completely given yourself to this other person now. They've become this focus in your life, and it just changes your perspective on everything, which is why there's so many benefits to marriage, not just spiritually and theologically, but there's material benefits, there are health benefits, there are economic benefits, and a lot of these benefits are rooted in that mind shift, that paradigm shift, when people stop making themselves the sole focus of their lives and start thinking about the other. It leads them to make more responsible choices because they're now thinking about the livelihood of others around them. It leads them to making more prudent economic decisions and with savings, because it's not just their money anymore. It's not just their lives. So it's across the board. It just changes everything for the good.
Wow. This is giving you a foretaste of the materials out there right now and the celebrations to come in our diocese and in and around the country, really refocusing on what marriage is, you know, and to focus on this action. I love that. I love you. And what is that commitment? You're saying, I'm going to commit that I will love you and I love you. And how is that more perfectly lived out than in the sacrament of love that is constantly outpouring? And we think of the Eucharist. The Eucharist is something that is truly adorable, that we could, in adoration, reflect on Jesus coming to us perfectly, most chastely, and constantly pouring out his own body, blood, soul, and divinity to nourish us, to nurture us, and to deeply impact our lives so that there's transformation there. But I have to say, you know, when I encounter like a married couple that have been married for 60 years or more, or even 50 years or more, and it's like, they're adorable. They look alike, they dress alike, they act alike, they have similar mannerisms all across the board, because you see a life well lived together in commitment to that one thing. I love you. So special. So special. So let's be renewed in this month of February. Let's be renewed in this great week coming up, 7th through the 14th, and the World Day for Marriage, February 14th. And if you don't like St. Valentine, clearly Mike Day is a testimony for you.
I'm a convert.
He's a convert. He's a big fan.
He's a good guy.
As I'm a fan. So we have you guys here at Facebook Live, and some of you have questions. So if there's any questions that you have along the way about specifics, or maybe even a question for Mike Day or myself, feel free to add those in the comment section below. And I think we have one right now.
Yeah, we have one from Diane Ward Cook. I think what she writes here is great, just really emphasizing what Mike says. You know, love is a choice. I've heard that many times before, but the second part of the sentence needs to be emphasized in society, is to choose the other over you.
Yeah.
That's the part of the sentence that has not been emphasized before.
It's so true. And that's why I love John Paul II's clarification. Love is not merely a sentiment. It can include it, but it's not merely a sentiment or a feeling. It is an act of the will, preferring in a constant manner. Remember the constant, that I love you. That's it. In a constant manner, the good of the other to the good of oneself. And one's whole life is ordered to living that reality and actively, in that like verb of love, actionably giving of oneself. In the same manner, reflecting of Christ in the Holy Eucharist, it is a perfect offering of self in that constant manner that is the stability of the very church that we worship him in, that even Satan may try to his nth degree, will never tear down. And neither will the sacrament of marriage, because it is rooted in this reality of I love you. And God so loved you that he gave you a spouse to love, so that you may be sanctified to a greater degree and be generative as God is generative and bring into this beautiful world new life. So we have another question.
Yeah,
Keep them rolling.
Yeah, this one just came in. This one comes from Courtney Castle.
Hey, Courtney.
What do you do when you have given your whole self in love and through Christ to your spouse, and you still do not get received by the other person?
Mike, do you want to start with that? And then
I do. First, I want to just express my sadness for that, because I know how challenging that feels. Well, and I probably should qualify that I'm not speaking in this moment as if I'm, currently in this situation. What I mean, like this sense that one has this desire, when they do truly love the other, and they're trying to model that love of Christ, and when you're not seeing that reciprocated, I understand how challenging that can be, and how heartbreaking that can be, and how hopeless that can seem sometimes. It's like working out. If we're going to the gym every day and we're working out, we're running, but every time we go to the scale, that number hasn't changed. How motivated are we to keep on working out? But something I had discovered in my own experience growing up. I had just shared about my past and not being in a relationship. I spent a lot of time cynical, bitter, and frustrated. But looking back now, as someone who's given the gift of marriage and the beauty of that relationship, when I look back on those times in my life, I lament how much of that time was wasted, because I realized, instead of focusing so much on another and who could be in my life, looking for the right person, I could have spent that time being the right person. And if I had spent more time on improving who I was as an individual, it could have made me a better spouse to my future spouse. So I say that to affirm you. I know it's challenging. In relationships, it takes two to tango, as the expression goes. That's part of that collaboration within the union. One person can't fix the marriage, but for your part, you can do all you can to continue to strengthen it. I mean, even if your spouse isn't reciprocating love, even if they aren't expressing love, or at least in the ways that are enriching to the relationship, there's still a lot of good that comes from the work that you are doing. And I know it's hard to see it, and I know it may not seem fruitful, but that doesn't mean change and grace isn't flowing. Mm-hmm. You look at our patron, St. Augustine, and you look at just the torment his mother went through when she saw the path that he went down, and how much she knelt before God and wept for his life to change. But she still continued to pray and continued to persist in that and never gave up hope. So I would say first, don't give up hope, but continue to pursue the other. Don't with the work that you do on yourself, don't. It can be easy to sometimes shut one off from the other and internalize all of this. You need to find those opportunities to share that with the other, because you're both in this together. And so even if they're not responsive now, keep inviting them to be part of that process, and one day it may click.
Yeah. I have to add on to what Mike is saying, because he's exactly saying what Mother Teresa would say to you in response to that question. This is a phenomenal quote, and it says, "The success of love is in loving. It is not in the result of loving." So we would think that if I love, there is reciprocity, there is a return. And so often in the world, we are constantly thinking of investment. If I invest myself, if I invest my resources, my money, my time, etc., what will I get in return? Well, the kingdom is not built upon that, nor is sacramental love. It is a pure deposit of oneself entirely, to the point of, like, St. Francis of Assisi. You think of that type of poverty, but even more so Christ. So Mother Teresa continues, "Of course, it is natural in love to want the best for the other person, but whether it turns out that way or not does not determine the value of what we have done." So in that sense, it's like, if you are maintaining your true commitment to love and you are following that through to the nth degree, yes, it's totally natural to see, I want to see the result in you. that you're like, I can imagine like a faith-filled woman that's trying to get her husband to go to church constantly. Come on, go on a retreat. I've seen so many couples, and it's like coaching, like, go on a retreat. Please just be inflamed with the love of God. And the prayers and the activities and the encouragement and the love that you're pouring in. And it's like, it's so normal to want to see a result of all of that hard work. But the result is in you for making the choice to love in that manner. And it is in that manner most that you reveal Christ to other people, including to the person or the spouse that you are trying to love, in that same way that Christ loved his church. So as we look to Mother Teresa's example, isn't it interesting that she has probably suffered more so than any other saint in the history of the church in that darkness, not receiving the reciprocal love in heart from God himself? You think of Jesus on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani. Why have you forsaken me? And in that reality, it's in that pressured moment of what is animating your offering, but in the capacity itself to love in that manner, despite not feeling. This is something altogether transcendent. I'd like to share, because sometimes the saints are out of touch. You're like, I could never be that holy. I could never be a Mother Teresa, you know? But let me contextualize it in a real story for you. And there was a woman that was a daily communicant, and she was married for over 50 years, and her husband was thoroughly abusive, not only verbally, but also physically. It was one of the most toxic relationships I had ever encountered. And if I was a priest in that circumstance, and there was no way that the individual party was not seeking assistance or help, which, by the way, we always should look for help or assistance and really be proactive about that, especially if dynamics are off, because there's a ton of services out there for you. But this woman, it was impossible. But her commitment to God before the altar to love him was something altogether heroic. I've never seen it in my priesthood other than in her. And most people would give up on a relationship, and I would fill out the paperwork for the annulment because of how toxic and violent and sinful, and how there is no love there, right? But this woman did not. This has always stuck with me. She loved, supported, encouraged, served, and endured the pain and suffering of what that toxic relationship was, to the point where this man received a terminal diagnosis. And there on his dying bed, he wept and he cried and he begged her for forgiveness. And he begged her to go find a priest to hear his confession and to bring him into the fullness of God's mercy. And do you know that this woman, this bride, daily communicant, suffered with Christ in the midst of her sacrament. And at the very end, this man who was so broken, this man who was so sinful, was saved by her yes, by her commitment to say, I love you. Now, that is a drastic testimony and a drastic story, but I share it because there is something profoundly powerful in her testimony. I still carry it in me, and I always will. I always will. But allow that to say love can accomplish miraculous things when it is purely given. So whomever it is that you are intentional about in asking that question, know of our prayers and know that we are here to serve and support. So we have another question, please.
Actually, a little lighthearted moment following that very deep reflection there, Father. But this one comes actually again from Diane Cook. She says, once in the heat of an argument, I told my husband, I'm done. I'm not going to pray for you anymore either. He responded, you can't do that. You are my ticket into heaven.
Oh, I love that. Diane, thank you so much for sharing that. That is too funny. I was chatting with a family this past week, and their little tagline, because they have like 7 kids,
yeah,
is when they're like in the heat of an argument. Well, whoever files for divorce first, you have got to take all the kids. But it's like a point of levity, you know. It's a point of levity. There has to be levity in relationship, you know. It's so important to have that lighthearted sense of sharing. So thank you guys for commenting and participating in this Facebook Live event. Again, make sure that you're checking the websites below for events that are upcoming. And let's talk about those events in specific. So we have one really in particular. I know for my parish, in the coming week, we're going to be having a festival for marriage after all masses at Resurrection. And there's going to be a ton of resources. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a blast. And it's our way of celebrating this week, of marriage. But also this kind of World Day for married love and really celebrating that well. Are there other opportunities for people to participate in events?
Absolutely. And I would say first and foremost, reach out to your parish. We don't know what we don't know, and sometimes the parish may be hosting something you may not even be aware of. Resurrection, I know, is hosting their Invest in Marriage Fair. St. Joseph's is doing something similar. Many parishes in the diocese have some form of marriage, family enrichment program going on there. So don't be afraid to ask. And that's twofold. First, you might find out what's there and be able to participate. But if there's not, it's a way to prod the parish to actually get something going. So it serves both purposes. But second, you can certainly go to the Family Life website, the Family Life Office website, to see a list of different opportunities here locally. We've got Diocesan Marriage Renewal, which is a marriage enrichment retreat weekend. Retrovi, which is a more intensive retreat weekend for couples who are in a more difficult or challenging situation. We've got some other events we can talk about too, but there's also a great local resource, and this is a citywide resource here in Duval County called jacksmarriage.org. And there you're going to find an up-to-date listing of all sorts of marriage enrichment programs and opportunities, many of them skills-based. There are some great catechetical things here at the parishes in the diocese, but there's also some great skills building opportunities, learning how to communicate better, how to resolve conflict better as a couple, how to learn more about one another as a spouse. There's also plenty that you can do on your own. There are some virtual marriage retreats. The USCCB provides one at the foryourmarriage.org website. There's also an online course through the Catholic Psych Institute, hosted by Dr. Greg Bottero. And there's also fun things you can do too. There's relationship inventories you could do, like the Prepare and Enrich inventory, which it provides you as a couple an assessment of where you're at in a relationship, your areas of agreement, disagreement on key issues, and always makes for a fun point of discussion. Also things like the 5 love languages, and that's a resource I absolutely love and recommend to so many couples, because in relationship you've got conflict. You've got disagreements, but then you also have the stressors that are affecting how you respond to those conflicts and disagreements. And a lot of times, how we respond is not necessarily us. It's all these other things going on that are keeping us from being the best version of ourselves. If I'm hungry, if I've been eating all day and I'm starving, and it's at the end of the day in the office, and I've got the phone ringing off the hook, and I've got emails coming in, and people coming into the office, my tolerance level and my charity is going to be significantly lower than if I had been just well-fed and, I'm in a good place. The same goes with marriage. With love, even though we're in a loving relationship, we don't always feel loved. And the 5 love languages, it's a way of understanding how the love gets communicated. It's a way of filling up the other person's love tank, so to speak, where they're satisfied. And it's remarkable how much the dynamic changes when you truly feel satisfied and loved by the other person. And so Dr. Gary Chapman, he does a masterful job of breaking down love into these 5 types of communication: gift giving, quality time, words of affirmation, physical contact, physical touch, and acts of service. Acts of service being the 5th. So you can look up resources like that. And then again, if you just want to just do something fun, we've got some date night resources up on our website. A quick little list, but references to some other lists, and you can even Google these things. I mean, we live in an amazing day and age. There's no excuse for not working on your relationship right now. And I'm going to be totally upfront about this. There is no excuse. If you say you can't find something to do, it's because you're not looking hard enough. All right, just Google, Bing, whatever search engine you like, look up date night ideas, and you're going to find a plethora of things.
And sometimes in that starvation mode where you've been so starved in your love language and you haven't been engaged in that way, it's like we become very, very lethargic and almost like cave dwellers, where it's like, I don't want to go out. I don't want to, And let this month of February just kind of reinvigorate you. If it's been a really long time since you've been on a date night, check some of these ideas out, And there's a really cool event coming up that we want to share with you. And Mike brought in some examples of this, but it is the Pouring Out Paint Date for a Couple. And you paint, you learn more about your marriage. And this is coming up on February 9th, I believe.
Yeah, it's coming up just this weekend, February 9th. And the great thing about art is that it really pulls us out of our comfort zones. Because not many of us are really artistic, or we don't think we're artistic. But when we're put in that environment, especially as a couple, what it brings out of us is it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. You learn a lot about the other through that process. But there is an event called Pouring Out Love. It's like a paint and sip, or one of those many type of painting couples events that you'll see throughout the city. But
so what do you sip when you're painting?
I believe there's wine.
Oh, there's wine? Can I participate? I won't be able to actually have paint from someone else. So I don't know. Maybe Bishop's available. Maybe I'll go with Bishop's.
Well, it's going to be hosted at a Cuban cafe, so I'm assuming there's some sort of levity there. But yeah, it's going to be at Mambo's Cuban Cafe this Saturday, February 9th, during the day from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. So it's not going to be something late in the evening. You can still have time in the day for other activities if you've got commitments. But what's great about it is that it's so easy. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you go to these other events, because if you don't know how to paint, and the instructor's saying, okay, now you do this, and you use a base coat, and now you do the layer, and like, I haven't picked my color yet.
Paint some happy little trees.
And why are mine so sappy and sad? It's challenging and it's overwhelming. But the great thing is that about this is if you can turn over a cup, you can do this form of art. It's acrylic pouring, and all it involves is picking 4 colors of paint. I won't give away too much about the event because there's a lot of other things that go into the decisions in which colors you choose. But you and your spouse, you pick 4 colors of paint. You pour the paint together in a cup, flip canvas over, and just let it pour. And the neat thing about it is that even though you as a couple are using the same 4 colors of paint, the 2 paintings come out very different, but complementary. And as an example, I'm going to show 2 that we did. My bride and I, Evie, and this is just an example of what their acrylic pouring technique kind of looks like. But again, we used the same exact colors of paint, the same process. We didn't have a brush or we didn't do anything different. We just dumped a cup over the canvas, and yet it produces something really, really neat and a great conversation point. I mean, we spent so much time laughing about it, talking about why they're different and why certain things gelled.
So cool. Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, I would highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. If the extent of your art ability is stick figures, this is for you too. I mean, don't be put off by the fact that it's art. Art is wonderful for the soul. Anyone is really an artist, and it really speaks to the heart of what marriage is. I just read an encyclical by Bishop Olmsted, and he refers to us as being co-artists with God.
Amen. Amen.
Speaking to marriage and this relationship, and the work of marriage being just co-artistry with God. I thought that's beautiful because in art, it's something you work on. Just because you got married doesn't mean it's finished. It's just the starting point, and it's always a work in progress.
It reminds me of John Paul II's letter to the artists as well, which is one of my favorite reads as well, that we participate in that manner. So as we conclude, just a word to all of you. The church is here to support you, to support your marriages, and to support your spiritual growth. And Mike Day has been selected in this vocation that he has received from God and also this diocese to minister to you and to minister to the people here through his office. So be sure, his office is here to help. His office is here to support. And clearly these events, like the one that we just said, and then also, jacksmarriage.org, there's so much out there to give married couples support. So if you're not currently in need of that support, you just want to have a nice time, really, there's a lot of events out there. Or if you know other couples that may be struggling, tap them into some of these resources that are in our comment section below, on our websites, and most certainly operative in Mike Day's office here in the diocese. So as we conclude, a lot of times, couples really shy away, Mike, from therapists because it's like that stigma. Oh, you go and see a therapist? You must be really screwed up, And it's like we shy away from that third party ear and that third party voice. And that's really all it is. And intentional, like when you have a Catholic therapist, for example, when you have a priest or a religious sister in your life that is there to be a paternal or maternal support to you, it's really an open ear and an open heart that you can speak to. And sometimes the counselor or therapist, priest or sister can give you a word that maybe gives you a different perspective. So what would you say to the whole concept of like therapists? No.
I'd say first and foremost, look, we're all broken. The world breaks all of us. And that's precisely the reason why Christ came. So if you're letting pride get in the way of seeking out assistance, just know where that's coming from, pride. That isn't coming from the Holy Spirit. That's not coming from God. There's nowhere in Scripture where God says, don't worry, you don't need help. You can figure this one out on your own. I have yet to find that passage. No, it's okay. All of us are there. And second, for people who say they don't need a counselor, yeah, but you're talking to somebody about your problems. So who's going to be the better consultant? Your buddies in the office or a trained professional who's on the outside, who has seen this before and can give you helpful, practical tools instead of just being, and agreeing with everything that you're saying. And I think the real issue is that, when we talk to our buddies, we talk to our friends, that they're going to agree with us, and a counselor will sometimes push us and see things more objectively. Sometimes the finger goes this way during that session. So, everyone needs help. Everyone needs assistance. Therapy isn't for failures. It's for guidance. It's taking that objective view at your relationship, something that's tough to see when we're in the thick of difficulty, and giving you a path forward, giving you tools, techniques, skills, and insights to move forward. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because one of the newest things that we've introduced here in the diocese is a Catholic therapist network. And I'm so grateful to Beverly DiNucci and our pastoral care coordinator here in the office, who's done a wonderful job of bringing this network together. But we do have a listing of Catholic therapists here throughout the diocese, across different cities. If you go to our website, family.dosafl.com/therapists, you'll find a listing of these different counselors, and we've got it broken up by location. So you can either look to see what region of the diocese, like Jacksonville, Flagler, Gainesville, Jacksonville Beach, and see who might be available in the area. So you'll find that link immediately in the comment section below, so you can have, a resource, and you could save it, even if you don't need it right now, just so that you remember, like, oh, I do have this resource, in my Catholic church, in my diocese.
And, Mike, I have to say thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for everything that you shared with us today. It's always a joy to have you on the show, and I'm sure there'll be many shows to come. And to our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful that we journey together in our faith so that we may enrich one another. And hopefully this show truly enriched you. So as we depart into and continue in this journey of the month of February, and most certainly for this marriage week coming up on February 14th, I'd like to pray a blessing over each and every single one of our viewers through the intercession of St. Valentine. Heavenly Father, through the intercession of St. Valentine, who so courageously and boldly supported the dignity of marriage between man and woman, so that it may be fruitful and reflect your greater generativity, I pray through his intercession that you may continue to reinforce all of the marriages in our diocese. We lift up to you Mike Day and all of his work and his staff, so that their work may be fruitful in your sight and inspired by the power of your Spirit. Continue to advance all of our couples in that romantic love of sacrament, of the sacrament of matrimony, Lord God, and continue to safeguard them from all harm and division and make them fruitful always through Christ our Lord. And may Almighty God bless you all, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And make sure you're celebrating that Valentine's Day with those nice St. Valentine's Day cards. And affirm those that you love. And they don't have to be your spouse. They could be your children. They could be your priest. Give your priest a little Valentine note and give him some love and support, right? So, let's spread the love. This is the month for it. And may God continue to